Good afternoon, game developers, and welcome back to the Northern Ireland Raspberry Jam Live. This month, we have a wide range of things lined up for you, and we can't wait to start. So, once again, we'd like to thank Nitech Solutions for the amazing office space that they've let us use this month, and for letting us carry out this month's jam once again in their really cool workshop. Lined up today are 2 workshops and an interview with Kyle, who is a member of the talent acquisition team in Hypixel. The first workshop, though, will be with myself and my very helpful assistant, Abby. We'll be giving you a brief overview and use of the MakeCode arcade system so that you can use the tools on it to kind of give you a lot of functionality to make games in your own home. After my workshop will be an interview followed up with a break to let you stretch your legs and to get some water. Finishing up, though, will be Kevin, and Kevin will be doing a crash course on game design and in his workshop, so you can then use them both together to make games in your own home. If you have any issues or any questions at all, feel free to pop a message into the live chat and a member of our team will help you out. But for now, though, let's start with MakeCode Arcade. So, to begin, I'm going to introduce Abby, and Abby should be on the other stream right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead myself, and I will talk to Abby and introduce her through, just like yourselves at home, to this new system. It's very useful. For those who have worked with the microbit and such, you'll see it like as if you'll see exactly the same thing. Near enough, just without the microbit, you'll see a MakeCode Arcade, little kind of game console, kind of like the Game Boy for those who remember that or even had one. So, Abby, could I ask you to give like a brief introduction of yourself?
I'm Abby. I don't know anything about this, so I'm going to be learning with you.
Fantastic. So, essentially, we're going to start off. What you need for this is just preferably a laptop, so you can actually get the workshop and the content on your laptop. You can type away. If we're on a screen or something like that, perfect. You'll see the code come up on Abby's screen, and I'll be talking you all through it, whilst Abby asking me questions back and forth. Any questions, though, from your end, pop them in the chat, and they'll be fired over to me. So, to begin, if I can ask, open your favorite web browser of choice and type in Google. And once you go to Google, you want to just, in the search box, type in MakeCode Arcade. And once you search for MakeCode Arcade, the very first option should be a link to https://arcade.makecode.com. And if you click that, it'll bring you straight in, hopefully, the very top link will bring you straight into the projects area. Now, for those who've worked with the microbit, this will be very familiar. You have your basic introduction, like kind of dashboard screen. You've got your projects along the bottom. For those who've done the workshop earlier on January, with Lucy, you'll have already a project there sitting there that you worked on. She did a maze kind of game, which was actually quite cool and very useful for the actual using of sprites and tile maps and everything. And honestly, we'll be going through a couple of other little tools in MakeCode, but it's trying to give those who haven't used it before another refresher. And for those who have done it, feel free to kind of mess around throughout the workshop, because we'll be making a different game. To give you kind of an idea, the game, for those who have seen it, it's whenever you don't get any internet connection on a Chrome browser, you'll have this little dinosaur that will like jump over cacti as you wait for the internet connection to come back. We'll make a kind of a mock-up version of that, very basic version. We'll have animation in it, we'll have projectiles, as they're called, because they fly across the screen, and we'll have a full score system, the whole shebang. But whenever you've gotten to the arcade front page, we want to start by hitting New Project. And we'll give it a name, and I'll call mine Dino Game. And hit Create. So once you've done that, straight into the code space. And essentially, we'll be working with blocks. For those who haven't used the blocks, don't worry. It's really simple and really straightforward to use. For those who have used it, it should be familiar. There's an option for JavaScript and kind of other languages and such. We're not gonna touch that just for the basis of this workshop. The beginning, though, is that you should have just a little box in the top left-hand corner saying on start. And that's it. For those who haven't used MakeCode before, though, very simple. On the very left-hand side, you have your actual emulator. So you don't need a physical unit to test with it. You have the digital one to kind of test around and kind of mess around with. Beside that, on the right-hand side, you have a full column of all your different kind of block types and other categories. So you have sprites, controller, game, music, scene, everything. And these can get very in-depth. The ones in advanced very nitpicky use cases you'd use for them. We won't touch on them, thankfully. So, but those who have used the microbit and such, you'll have used the extensions and such for the NeoPixels, loads of different things. But for us, we won't need any of that. Further on to the right-hand side from that column is the actual area where you have your code blocks. And this is what we'll be using to actually drag and drop our blocks around to make our programs and to code this from scratch to a full working game. So, Abby, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Fantastic. I'm going to disable my mouse because it keeps clipping and that's just fixed. Technical difficulties. Oh, no. So, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I can get my blocks. So, what we're going to do is there'll be some time in the middle of this workshop for you to kind of tinker around and to use your own kind of artistic skills. Now, for me, to make this simple and straightforward as possible, we're going to have just a background. We're going to have a dinosaur, we're going to have a couple of cacti, and we're going to have just a floor. The floor won't be too magical, but feel free to experiment around. The idea as well is that there'll be times for you to actually kind of design it in your own way. So I think Abby mentioned before that she was going to, instead of a dinosaur, she might try like an Among Us character. Well, there is also a Pac-Man ghost here for those who want to use that as a reference. But what we're going to do is whenever we have our code, there we go, we're going to start, and in our code, we want to start with the background. So we're going to go to scene. Scene will have loads of different options for us. We want to set the background image first of all, just to kind of give it a bit of an environment. And whenever you have that block in, what you want to use is on the right hand side, you have this little like pill shaped thing, which will just be like a blank square. Click on that, and you will have an editor. Now, at the very top of that, you'll have gallery. We're going to use this for our little kind of background. Now, we're going to have little sections of time where you're going to have time to mark this up. So don't worry about it now. You will have time to come back to it. But I don't know. I kind of like, the whole kind of hill, green top, blue sky kind of background. So I'm going to click that one on my end. And whenever you've done it, simply go to the bottom right-hand corner and hit save. Or hit done, sorry. Once you hit done, give it a wee second. On the very left-hand side, it will suddenly sprout up and your game will now have a background. That simple. So, the background is only one part of the piece though. We have so many other things to do. But very simply, don't worry. Do not worry. Our next part will be, well, the floor. We need a floor, so we can actually kind of have the dinosaur run across. For that though, same thing. We're going to go and we're going to use tile map. So for this point, what I'm going to show is that if you have any confusion, what happens is the blocks are color coded to actually assign them to the different categories. So the green will go into loops, and that kind of blue navy color will go to the scenes. For me though, I'm going to use the search function, and I'm going to search in tile. And what's going to happen is it's going to give me a bunch of different options for what relates to tiles. And for us, I'm going to use the set tile map 2. And I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to drop that below the background image. And then, well, obviously we haven't seen anything now. So the tile map doesn't actually have anything on it initially. What we'll do with it though is the tile map will let us have like little blocks so we can build up our environment with. And then from our environment, we can actually make walls. And the walls will be what the actual kind of player and the, well, projectiles as they're called, kind of collide with them. And we'll be able to set that all up right in this little block. So whenever you've gotten the tile map block, if you click on right on that square again, you'll be brought up with this little interface. And this is a little bit different though. So instead of using the actual kind of like bog standard way, the resolution, the size of it, sorry, we're going to set it in the bottom left hand corner. You have these two numbers now. This is your width and your height. Now the height goes down in games, but we'll explain that later. So instead of 16 by 16, we want to do 10 across and 8 high. So in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see two numbers. 10 is changing from 16 by 16 to 10 by 8. And that should scale up properly and give you a little bit of a smaller rectangle to work with, and this will be what we'll be using to preview on our like little emulator. As well as that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly mention, so for those who've never actually used this before, you have lots of different kind of little areas on it. Specifically, this is only used for actually making the front kind of face that you can see on the game. For this though, you have lots of different tile maps. On the left hand side, you have like a column, and it gives you all the previews and such. And the reason that's kind of like the way that it's laid up now is that you'll have like corner pieces, so you can kind of stretch it out, and you can have a gigantic floor, or you can have like a single square floor. For us though, we're gonna go click the right hand arrow, and we're gonna use, I'm a bit boring, so I'm gonna use the little kind of dirt earthy kind of ground, so and whenever I actually select like a square on it, what'll happen is I will use that tile map, and I will now be able to use that and drop it onto the actual kind of like I'll use that on the actual kind of tile map, and what will happen is I can draw a base, or like ground, which we can use for the game. So Abby, I know I've thrown that all at you very, very quickly. How have you gotten on?
I've just drawn in the ground, the tile map.
Dead on. I'm guessing you've got the wee tile map and the background.
Yep.
Lovely. And then, do you see anywhere on it as well, actually? Okay, so on mine, I can see on the top right hand corner, I have this little option called Show Walls. Is that enabled for you?
Yeah, it is.
Lovely. So what we're going to do is with that Show Walls button, we have that toggle on. We need to make sure it's on, because what it'll do is it will show up the walls in a different color. So we can actually use it to see what our player or other projectiles will collide with. So on the left hand side, you'll see just above the area that you've selected your little kind of like block for placing down your floor with, you'll see like this 3D cuboidy thing. If you click that, it should go pink. And then what happens whenever you actually drag your mouse over the kind of like editor, Abby?
There's a little red and pink and
Perfect. I think as well. So this is actually showing. So this is showing. It's not actually like, it's not going to paint our canvas pink. Don't worry. This is only going to be for the game to know that we're actually going to use this as a wall. And simply, just like you did with painting the ground, we're going to click and drag, and we're going to paint the entire bottom where we put our actual floor. We want to cover with the red kind of pinky tiles, and that will basically tell the game this is a floor. Collide with it and make sure that you're actually going to recognize it and just not fall through it. So the floor should be completely covered.
Yep.
And from that, what we want to do is as well in the bottom, below the very bottom, below the actual floor, you should see this thing. It says level 1 currently. If you want, feel free to rename that to something different. So I'm going to label this to floor. And then hit done. And then, very shortly after, our game should update and have a floor. And that, well, for me, it's just a black bar because I'm not in any way creative. But this is now time for you to experiment around, tinker around, see what you think you can make out of it. And if you want, feel free to use the other tile maps or the actual like little icons. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to tinker around, see what you get on with, and spice up the floor a little bit, have like grass instead of just earth, or add like a sun into the background of the actual map, whatever tickles your fancy. But we're gonna have 2 minutes for you to tinker around, kind of design it in the way that you want, and we'll be straight back. Just for now though, I'm gonna keep tinkering around, make sure that this is all gonna be nice and creative on my end. So how do you think you're getting on, Abby?
We're on a wee sun here.
I think I'm actually doing the same thing. I've just realized for the actual tool, it's like you draw the circle and it like stretch it out from the center, and then you just drop in the fill tool with whatever color you want.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I'm gonna make mine look a little bit more deserted. Admittedly, cacti do fit in with the desert, not green hills.
I've gone for more of a flowery floor.
Oh, I just flipped mine upside down. So, how do you think you've gone on, Abby?
Well, I've got a nice sun in my background now, and I've got
Mhm.
some flowers on the floor.
I will draw very quickly some little cacti, and then what I'll do is, oh, okay, this is a very okay, this is unfortunately a mess on my screen, but we're getting somewhere. All creative, and perfect. So now that you've had a little bit of time just to kind of make it your own as such, I must admit mine is certainly what some might say, or I might say myself, a masterpiece. Oh, I completely forgot about the actual time up. It's fine. It's fine. So, with your amazing backdrop and you've got your tile map ready, we're gonna now get the player started. Now, for me, I'm gonna do the box standard dinosaur, but if you want to make it your own, by all means. However, I think the actual sprites we're gonna animate them later. So we have there's a little bit of an extension to this, so don't feel like you have to pour your heart into this one, because hopefully if you can animate it, perfect. But just be aware that it might change up a little later. So go for something basic now, spice up a little later, and then animate it at the end. But for me, what I'm gonna do is it's very simple. Because the game is using what's called sprites. Sprites are like little kind of objects you can interact with, and in the game or on Make Code Arcade, if you hit on the sprites category, you'll see the very first thing says create in the create section, set my sprite to sprite of kind player. And that's exactly what we want. So we want to drag it out and drag it below the background and tile map blocks. And right now it won't do anything. It'll just pop it on. That's it. And make sure it's type player, because player means that we, using the controls on this, can actually interact with it. Now, for the character though, now it would have been great for another 2 minutes. But what I'm gonna draw a little dinosaur. Abby, are you gonna do the Among Us?
Among Us, sure.
Okay. So we're gonna draw our characters essentially just like the background and tile map. Well, not like tile map, more like the background. You have a selection of colors. You paint, brush, kind of make up the actual little kind of character as you go on, and we should it's probably only take like 2 minutes.
Do you have to do it the full size of it?
No, actually you don't. I'm guessing. Do you want to resize it?
Oh no, I just mean do you have to fill all the spaces here?
Oh, sorry. No, you don't. And so what will happen is, Make Code Arcade is actually smart enough to know that not every single part of the like character or every single part of that square is like part of the character. If you make it like a really thin, kind of like slim, maybe like a stick man or something like that, it will automatically make that interactive. So if you hit a wall, it's not like a big bunch of white space to the right hand side. It's actually just gonna hit the little stick man instead. But for now, I'm gonna try and get my little dinosaur. A very cool tool actually, just to make sure you're all aware. Abby,
Yes.
can I ask you, on your little kind of editor, could you go to like a corner and to anywhere actually on the screen and left click, and then on the pixel to the right hand side right click?
Huh?
Okay, what happens?
Oh, it goes white.
It goes white. Okay. One thing that I think is actually quite nice in the way that this has been developed is you have two colors. You have a primary and a secondary, and to save you from having to move the mouse backwards and forwards, you can just have two colors signed up or set up on the cursor, and you can just go between left click and right click. So with your mouse or your trackpad or whatever, go over to the left hand side of the selection of colors. If you left click, you'll see the actual above the colors little kind of preview of what colors in each one. You'll see there's a box in the front and a box kind of hidden behind it below it. The front one is the primary, bottom back one is the secondary. But if you right click instead of left clicking, it'll change the secondary. And then same thing as Abby did. If you left click and right click about the place, it'll change the colors between them depending on which button you actually click.
Cool.
For me though, I personally have it set up to black on the left one and transparent on the right one, so I can actually like erase any mistakes I've made.
Got my little character.
You got your little Among Us character?
Yep.
And then I've literally just actually finished my dinosaur. I'm very proud of it. It's adorable. So, just like with the level though, or with like the actual kind of tile map of the floor, we want to name this. We need to be very, very, very good at naming things, because this one is going to be remembered for later on down the line. So, because mine is a dinosaur, well, actually, you probably go with more basic name like character or player one. So player being the actual thing that it is, and one for the first frame. Because later on, if you're animating it, you want to be able to go from player 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. So I'm going to name this Dino 1. And once I've named it Dino 1, and whenever you're happy with it, if you hit done, the game will restart just as normal, and it should just pop in. And I think for me, it's popped in the center. Has that happened to you, Abby?
Yep.
Lovely. Okay. It doesn't do anything right now. Don't worry. Well, actually, no, I think you can. No, you can't even. Never mind. Can you? No, the buttons don't do work. Okay. Well, we're getting somewhere. We've got a character, we've got a background, and we've got an actual floor. So, we will want to move the character into a position that we can start the game at. So, the character won't move left and right, or sorry, the player will not move left or right. They'll only be able to jump up and down. So, whenever the actual kind of projectiles are coming across, they'll jump over the projectiles, and then they'll just go straight back down. What we'll do though to actually achieve that is we're actually going to want to move we're going to want to place the actual sprite or the player at a certain position. So, Abby, can I ask you to go to, on your left hand side, if you go to scene,
Yep.
now you're going to need to scroll down quite a bit, but at the middle part, you should see place my sprite on top of tile map call row.
Yep.
Perfect. So if you drag that block out from the scene and place that below the actual setting up of your sprite, and what will happen is initially, because it's set to 0, 0, it'll just ping off my dinosaur into the top left hand corner, which isn't ideal, obviously, but we can fix that. Now, you might be thinking as well, 0, 0, does it not start in the bottom left hand corner like a graph? This is where I was kind of talking about the actual like position and such, and the width and the height, going down. It's a bit of a weird thing, but it makes sense in actual programming. So our columns are just like, think of a spreadsheet. You have columns that are side by side, and you have rows which are above and below each other. For our column though, the actual position, okay, now this is going to require maybe a bit of trial and error. Feel free. I think though, for me, is my dinosaur currently is at 0, 0. So if I put him one column, so if I change call from 0 to 1, okay, perfect. So my dinosaur is now moved one column to the right. So it starts from the top line corner, moves right for positive columns, and moves down for positive rows. Now if you put minus, it'll just disappear. Don't do that. Don't put a minus, please. For rows, though, let's try 4. Where does that put you? Oh, where does it put it for you, Abby?
It puts me midway at 3.
Ah. Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. So in that case, if we change it to 5, that should change it and put it onto the ground.
Oh, it's the other way around.
Yes. So, essentially it counts down. So it does, which is it's a bit weird to think about, but in essence, it does make sense. But the idea is that with rows and columns, instead of doing like x, it's kind of similar, sorry, to x and y, except the axes are kind of flipped. For those who do graphs, it'll fry your head, but trust me, it'll make sense. But yeah, now we have our actual sprite in the correct position. Our next thing to do is to get our character moving. So you may be thinking, right, our game is great and all, but we can't do anything yet. Very true, but we've set up quite a lot. What we want to do though is we want to use the controller now. So in the left hand side on the column, if you hit controller and then pull out, there should be an option for you, Abby. I should say on a button pressed.
Yep.
Lovely. If you drag that out and put it just below your on start lip, and nothing's changed. That's fine. So now we want to actually interact and have our player move or change in some way, shape, or form whenever we press the A button. Now, this is going to be a little bit weird, but do not worry. Well, for those who've done maths, a little bit of maths, you'll understand, items and things have velocity and speed and such. For those who don't worry. What we'll do though is we'll add some form of gravity to the game, so whenever your player jumps, they don't just like go off and just keep continuing flying. They'll jump and then slowly gravity will catch up and they'll drop back down. So it's kind of like a bouncing effect as such, but only when you press A. Now, for us to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to, because we're interacting with our sprite, we want to go to sprites in the left hand column. And now you have lots of different options for saying changing and setting stuff about the actual, my sprite, which is your actual player, but you don't see anything about you can say set velocity and such. We don't want to do that. We want to do set my sprite X to 0. Do you see that, Abby?
Yes.
Lovely. If you could drag that out and put that right into the on button A pressed block. Now, currently, if we press that, it will literally make our little kind of dinosaur or little character go to the very left hand side because X is across, and we'll go to the very start of X, which is right on the edge of the border. To change that though, you'll see there's a little drop down where the X is like a little block, and if you click that drop down, you'll have loads of options. You have left, right, lifespan. You have lifespan, and then you'll have stuff like velocity and acceleration. We want to work with velocity, but more specifically, because X is across and Y is up, we want to work with the Y. Well, Y up being positive. Okay, we'll not explain that bit. X is across, positive, and Y is vertical. Well, X is across, Y is vertical. And we want our character to jump, so we need to work with the vertical kind of side of things, which is Y. So acceleration wouldn't work, but velocity would. We want to give it a boost of speed, a boost of velocity to kind of jump up. So we want to use the... Oh, my drop down's got disappeared there. So the V of Y, so Vy, velocity of Y. And we want to set it to, I think we can tinker with this later, but a nice rough number maybe would be 30. And Abby, with that done, has your game reloaded?
Yes.
Lovely. So Abby, what happens when you press A?
Nothing.
Uh-oh. So, apologies. So I've just realized it's 30, and I did say before that Y goes up but down. So your X is across, it's down. So what do you think we should set 30 to? Minus, yeah. So if we type in minus, so put a minus right in front of it, and we press enter, it should update for us. and then the game will reload. Try that again, Abby. See what you
It's
get.
jumping,
It's jumping?
but it's not coming down.
Oh. So it looks like my dinosaur is just flying away
Yeah.
like a helium balloon. Bit of an issue. But that's not a problem. We said we were going to simulate gravity. So we're going to add some form of acceleration because, well, I'm no way able to explain gravity. But essentially, gravity pulls us down to the ground, very simply. But there's an acceleration that pulls us down. Because if I jump, I don't just like jump away, So what I'll do is I will ask Abby, could you go back to sprites?
Yes, I can.
Now, we've changed the velocity, but there was an option for acceleration. So why don't we set the my sprite's acceleration of x or acceleration of y? Get the set my sprite x to 0 block and drag that out. And just pop it in the on start block. So after your background tile map, your sprite, and your actual like placement of the sprite, you should then have a set my sprite x to 0.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is, can you select AY, so acceleration Y,
Yes.
and what do you think this should be?
I don't know.
Feel free to throw a number.
I don't want to go too high. 30?
Okay, 30. So if we have an acceleration of Y at 30, now this is going to be a trial and error process. What will happen now is if your game is reloaded, Abby, if you press A, what happens?
It jumps and comes down.
It jumps and comes down. Do you think that'll be long enough for it to go up and down?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, later on we'll get the actual projectiles and we can always tinker around with them, see what we get on. Maybe little pebbles at the point, and then you can have giant cacti. Well, for me, I have giant cacti. But perfect. We have jumping as such. We've got acceleration to pull the dinosaur down, pull the character down, and something to push it up, and that's really the jumping action done. Now later on there will be a part where if we have enough time we'll implement some form of double jump. But Abby, could you do me a favor as well? There's a very, very inherent flaw with this.
Yes.
What happens if you mash the A button?
I float up to the sky.
Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen anything on this earth do that. Well, other than a rocket. Rockets have very good functionality for that.
Me either.
So we're going to need to implement some form of code to check if the player is on the ground, then you can actually start flying again, or apply a velocity to the person or to their character or to the player more like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called an if statement. Now, an if statement is very good because it allows you to make decisions in code. And essentially what we want to do is in the left-hand column, we want to hit logic. And the very first thing will be the if statement. So we'll drag if true then. And we'll drag that. Now, Abby, do me a favor. Can you see whenever you actually drag that if statement, you see it like wrap around your existing code in the A button pressed part?
I see it go underneath the set my sprite.
Ah. So it's like the if statement and then the set sprite velocity.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if that happens to you, not a problem. What I want you to do is, can you drag that set velocity block and drag it into the if statement?
Yeah.
Lovely. And that should essentially let you say, only run this code if true or if the condition is true. Now, for this, we're wanting to check if we've got the ground or if the player has hit the ground. Now, to do that though, we're going to interact with the scene in some way, shape or form. So if we go to scene and we scroll down and we look, there will be bingo. So if you scroll down to the very bottom, Abby, do you see, is my sprite hitting wall left?
Yes.
Lovely. If you drag that out and then you drop that into the...
Instead of the true?
Instead of the true. And then... Now, where is our wall actually? Like, is it... If you click the drop down, you'll have different options. Where do you think we should actually have the wall? Or which wall should we select?
The bottom one?
Okay, so we have bottom. And then, that's essentially the code setup. if you try and mash the A button again,
Yeah, it won't let me.
it just goes once.
Well, it'll let me jump once even.
Perfect. So, what do you think? You've got the character going, which is like a little Among Us character. You've got the floor customized, and you've got the actual background customized.
Yeah.
I think now it's time for some projectiles. I don't know. What do you think you should have in your game?
I don't know, like little balls or something.
Okay. So you have little kind of ball projectiles that'll roll over, and then whenever your player hits that, they'll die. Well, they will. What's the word? They will need to they'll need to respawn and restart,
Yeah.
but you'll have a high score. But to do that, what we'll do is there's a way that you can have the actual kind of game. If you go to is it in game? Yes. So if you go to game, your second block. Could you read out the name for me?
On game update every 500 milliseconds.
Milliseconds. Perfect. If we drag that out to the right hand side, and what we're going to do now, what this does is essentially it updates and runs this every X number of milliseconds. Now, Abby, with your intelligence, how many seconds are in a millisecond? How many milliseconds are in a second?
How many milliseconds are in a second? 1,000?
Yes. Okay. Don't worry. So 1,000 milliseconds in 1 second. Now, honestly, I don't think it'd be very fun to have a constant hurl of projectiles coming towards you. But at the same time, it shouldn't be like separate enough. If you know what I mean. Like there shouldn't be like so much of a gap that you can just basically wait, jump, wait, jump. So, how often do you think these should spawn in?
I don't know, like every 1 or 2 seconds.
Okay. Well, 1 or 2 seconds. We'll go for the middle ground of 1.5 seconds. So what you should be able to do is click on the 500 and then change that, or put a 1 in front of it, and then type 1500.
Yep.
Now, that will then, in the background, it's running the code. So in the background, every 1.5 seconds, it's running this code over and over and over again. So we can now tell it whenever this has updated, we want to run the actual kind of code to spawn a projectile. Now, this is kind of the fun. This is more the funner part. Your projectile obviously cannot be an actual kind of like player or something like that. So we don't want to make another player. But if you go to Sprites, Abby, and you scroll to the very bottom, or sorry, not the very bottom, just below the bottom, do you see a block that might help us?
The projectiles, set projectile.
Okay. On my screen, I see 2. So
Yeah,
which
I see
one?
2. I don't know.
Well, in that case, well, we don't want to have it come from our current sprite. So, do you think we should have the top one just to have like to create a new kind of sprite and everything?
Well, I think mine is the other way around yours.
Round. Well, yeah, yours will be different.
Yeah.
So, so if you drag that top block out, or the top one of the 2, sorry, and drag that just into your game update, loop.
The projectile from side with VX50, VY50.
Perfect.
Bottom one for me.
Oh, the very bottom
Yeah.
one. Oh. See, this is why we have the Blue Peter style thing. So, whenever you've that block dragged out, now, it won't change anything. It'll all be the same. But, first thinking about this, what direction will the projectile be going?
It will be going.
Oh, okay. So, if you think about it, we'll be jumping over them. So, it'll come from the right-hand side and just kind of glide along the bottom. As if, well, for me, it's going to look like my dinosaur's running. But the little projectile will kind of glide along the bottom and then just kind of go underneath the dinosaur. So, we'll move from right to left, which means we're going to need to go... We're not going to need to move up and down. So, we'll set the velocity of y to 0. And a cool little thing that Make Arcade actually has built in is this little kind of slider selector sort of thing. Now, what you want to do is, because we wanted to go kind of, well, what would be considered backwards for the graph, or for kind of like the rows. I think -30. Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah, we'll set it to -30 for now, so we will. And we'll have that set up. So for me, I've got set projectile to projectile from side with Vx -30, Vy 0. Does that look familiar to you, Abby?
Well, I'm just putting in the -30 now.
Ah, no problem. And so, just like the actual kind of player, the player will only be able to jump up and down, and these will only be able to move left and right. So we obviously don't want the actual dinosaur moving, or the character or player moving up and forward and backwards, because that makes the game too easy. We're gonna have them stuck in one place. So, are you ready to get the projectile done?
Yep.
Lovely. So just like before with the actual player and sprite, if we click on the little kind of square, we will go straight into the editor. And I think this is another time for quick kind of sketch up for a projectile. Now I'm going to make... So Abby, actually, if you want to make a ball, you should be able to go to the very center tile or pixel, just drag out a ball.
Yep.
Lovely. And
Do I have to have it touching the ground?
no, you don't. So the game recognizes whenever it's actually on the ground. What I would recommend though is if you have it at the bottom, so that it kind of keeps the top of it free, and it is at the very front, so you know that whenever it's coming on, that it will be, well, as far forward as possible.
And do I have to fill the whole space again?
Not the entire space, but a nice kind of very outstanding object would be quite good to look at. So I'm gonna make a little ball as well. I'm gonna make mine red.
I've got mine as pink.
And then perfect. So how are you getting on?
I'm just doing a wee outline for my wall here. All fancy.
I know there's ones who've like designed like little barrels and such so that they like look like they're rolling across. But I think yeah. Perfect. Okay. So I've got my little kind of wee sphere done. And what do you think, Abby? What should we name this one?
All one.
Ball one it is. And then we'll hit done in the bottom right hand corner whenever we've named it. And then, all going well.
Oh, it's gliding along the top.
It's going along top. They're like clouds actually.
Yeah.
So just like before, our dinosaur or our player was stuck. We don't want them, our dinosaur or our player was stuck in the center and then top left hand corner and such and such. We don't want that to happen. What we can do though, very simply, just like before, we want to go to sprites. Oh, sorry, to scene. And we want to scroll down, and you'll see, just like before, we have the place my sprite currently set to my sprite on top of tile map, call, and row. So
Are we gonna have to change the my sprite to projectile?
we are actually, good point. So whenever you have that, if you want to drag that into the game update, and then just as Abby said, you hit the little drop down, and from my sprite, you should have a couple of different options. You'll have like new variable and such, but we don't want to touch that. So you'll have my sprite and projectile. And for my game, because it's just automatically restarted, my little dinosaur's like jumping up to the very top. I'm gonna select projectile, and what's gonna happen is I'm gonna set. Well, if you want it to be as far out as possible, we want it to have it the maximum, like the width of the actual sort of scene or the actual kind of like game. So what width did we set the
And I think
tile map? Yeah. Because I know we changed it from 16 by 16 to something
10 by 8.
10 by 8. So we want it to happen at column 10. So it's the very edge. No, because we're counting in rows, we'll probably want to have it the same kind of height as... Okay, mine's covering the sun. We probably want to have it as the same row as our sprite. So mine is set to row 5. So I'll have it as row 5. Does that work for you, Abby?
Yes.
Perfect. So
I can jump over them.
now, for those who are following at home, you'll notice that your character or player might actually hit the actual kind of like projectiles. We can fix that, don't worry. It's very easy. But I think what we want to do to actually get that to happen, though, we want to have something to recognize when our player has hit the projectile. To do that, we're going to go to the sprites block and we're going to scroll. And Abby, do you see anything that might help us? So I see something in overlaps, which I think might be able to help us. About halfway down.
Where?
In overlaps.
Yep.
And so on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind player. Bit of a mouthful. If we drag that out, do you think? So if we change on sprite of kind player. Now, if we think about it, our sprite is of type player, but we want the other sprite to be of type. Any idea, Abby?
The projectile.
Projectile. Perfect. So we have whenever a player overlaps a projectile, well, we want the game to end. So we'll go to game, and the third option in that little category is game over. And unfortunately, it will be a lose. And what will happen is, whenever you drag that in, now, unfortunately, very quickly for me, my dinosaur will die very quickly. And that's it.
Oh, I'm dead.
Well, that is a shame. But we can fix that. So we can jump over them. But I think our
Mine's a
height
little bit
isn't.
off, yeah.
Yeah. No problem. The game is done, but a little bit of tweaks here and there to do. So just before we end, I'll get it used to do a. So instead of the actual acceleration, let's say, what do you think we should change the acceleration to? Because I'm thinking maybe 100. I'm going to tinker around and see what that does.
Yeah, let's go for 100.
And then I'll make the acceleration lower.
Oh.
And I think I've set mine to 20, and I can now jump over it.
Well, now
Does that
I'm
work for you,
coming
Abby?
down on the other ones.
Hmm?
The next one I'm coming down.
Oh, right, so you then hit the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can very quickly change that. And we can choose it. So, on the left-hand side, you'll have a math option.
Yep.
Okay. And then you'll have a pick random. It's probably just near the bottom.
Yep.
So if you drag that pick random and drag that into the select projectile to projectile from side VX.
In the on game update section?
Yes. And if you want to place that in the VX, because we want to change the speed of them so that you can have a chance to actually jump over multiple. And we're going to pick a random from, let's say, because we have minus 30 there. Let's say from minus 10 to minus 30. Oh, okay. I think it's a bit too slow.
Yeah.
Let's make it a little bit more exciting. From minus 10 to minus 50. 50. And I think with that,
Ooh.
is that on? Yeah.
Yeah.
All good?
Interesting. Yeah.
So feel free at home to tinker around with the different velocities and such. And we'll see how that goes. So for now though, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up the workshop. And well, we hope you enjoyed building games in MakeCode Arcade. At this moment in time, we're going to give you a 5-minute break to let you finish the games off. and just kind of fix around and fix any bugs in them. Once you've finished, we'd love to play your game. If you'd like to click the wee share button in the game, you can copy the URL of your game and pop it into the YouTube chat. For now, we'll be back at 5 minutes past 4 with our interview with Kyle at Hypixel, so make sure you stick around.
Welcome back, games designers. So, up next, we have an interview from Kyle from Hypixel Studios, based just up the road here in Northern Ireland. He'll be talking to you all about the games industry and how you can land yourself a job within games.
We have Kyle today for the virtual jam for our interview this month, and he's going to be talking about what he does at Hypixel and his involvement with the company. So, Kyle, can I ask you to give a wee introduction who you are, what you do at the company, and just kind of a brief overview of what the organization does?
Yeah, my name's Kyle, or KG, as most people in work know me. I am talent acquisition is my fancy title, but it basically means recruitment. I work in recruitment at Hypixel Studios, so there's two of us in the recruitment team, myself and my colleague Holly, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. So our job is basically to find awesome people to make cool things, and the cool thing that we're making at the minute is Hightail. So some of you might have heard the name Hypixel before. We kind of grew out of a Minecraft server, which is still running. The Hypixel Minecraft server, there's loads of mini games on there. So a lot of the team came from the background of just being modders working on that server, or sometimes they played on it and then worked on it. Now we've kind of grown into a full-size studio where we've got people who have come from that background of starting out playing on the Hypixel server and then working on it, right up to people who've been in the industry maybe 15, 20 years in some cases. So the project we're working on now is Hightail, which is our own game. You can go and check out the trailer on YouTube. It's kind of a sandbox RPG, and we look at it like the next evolution of the kind of block game genre, which is like Minecraft, that kind of game. So yeah, we're in the process of working towards that. Don't ask me to tell you anything about the game or when it's coming out.
So, you've just explained what kind of projects the organization is actually known for. You mentioned there about the Minecraft server and such, and sort of like the actual kind of development process of Hytale. Do you have any involvement with any of the kind of not the development specifically, but like have you seen the project grow over a while and just kind of saw how it's developed?
Yeah, so I've been with the company now for about a year. And in that time, we've hired a load of people. We're continuing to kind of build out the team. So I get to kind of see where all the pieces of the puzzle go, if that makes sense. So, I'll be maybe 1 week hiring artists, another time I might be hiring programmers and people who are going to work on the game engine, which is where all the cool gameplay stuff lives and plays. I might be hiring designers, game designers, and that's the kind of people who design the stuff you actually play in the game. I might be hiring people who are in the operations team, which is where I would work. That kind of goes into the business side of games. So, people that run the office, people that work in, human resources, people that handle all the payroll. So, like finance, that kind of thing. And then obviously recruitment.
Dead on. So you'd say that there's actually quite a lot of like, there's not just kind of a team of developers specifically, but there's a lot of kind of involvement from many different people just to make one final game.
Yeah, like if a lot of people when they think about, oh, I would love to make games and get a job in the games industry, you kind of go to those first kind of thoughts that are like art and programming.
Hmm.
But then behind that, there's a whole load of business stuff. There has to be someone there. Production's a good example. So producers are people who are in charge of the teams that make the pieces. So a producer might not actually be making anything that ends up in the game, but they're making sure everything's running smoothly, everyone's work's divided out. If anyone's struggling, they've got someone there to help them along. So there is a lot of roles outside of that, having a lot of skill. Maybe you're really good at art or making 3D models, or maybe you're really good at programming or maths or stuff like that. There's a lot of skills outside of those
Hmm.
that can get you jobs, definitely.
We're seeing a lot more people have different skills and different abilities, but obviously it's not like a cookie cutter sort of thing. It's like a very flexible sort of environment.
Yeah, I'm a big believer on transferable skills, because there's stuff you learn when you're doing a lot of different things throughout your life that you can apply to work, and you can take things that you maybe learned in one job that has nothing to do with a new job,
Mhm.
but you can take the lessons that you learned and then move them across and apply kind of your thought process to it in a more educated way because
Mhm.
you've had that experience. So, it's really important, like, when you're getting part-time jobs and stuff, especially if you're younger, like I started off, I was a sandwich artist at one time in Subway. That's the actual job title. I didn't make that up. It's actually a sandwich artist.
Mhm.
But you know, there was stuff I learned there that I still would use today. Stuff like, you know, just working in a team, talking to colleagues.
Mhm.
You know, maybe if there's an issue in the team, getting it resolved, that kind of thing. Little things like that that you pick up apply to every job. So it's really important when you're going through to kind of remember that or
Mhm.
keep it in the back of your mind at least.
I must admit, the Subway sandwich artist. Well, it's a cool title, just like talent acquisition, but obviously the experience pays off there. It's like anything can kind of obviously be used again once you've got the skills.
Yeah, that's it. You know, or you're maybe doing a job where there's a lot of repetition,
Mhm.
and being able to do repetitive tasks and work on them and be able to focus for a period of time of that is a skill. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Because sometimes you might like if you took that uh, a very repetitive thing of making a sandwich, or you know you're working in food and you're making something over and over again to the same specification, and
Mhm.
then you go on to do like software engineering. You might have a there might be a situation where you have to, you know, implement stuff over and over again, and it's very repetitive, and how your brain manages to cope with that, you know, is probably a skill you learned from when you were working in the burger joint or in Subway or wherever, you
Mhm.
know. So there is a lot of skills like that, kind of more soft skills that are transferable between jobs. Absolutely.
With your insight, obviously you've seen people come and go from different positions. You've seen people come in maybe like even part-time, full-time, and then what they input to the company in terms of their role. Would you see any new roles coming up recently, or do you see like very much like traditional roles like developer, designer, and obviously people in the background working? So,
Well, the so I was involved in the games industry way back. I was a graduate out of a games course back in the mid 2000s.
mhm,
And so I worked for a couple of years around games. And, you know, back then the technology was very different. There's been a lot of new technology since then. So the rules, from what I can see, back then, you know, the rules were very generalized. And now there's more specialized roles. So
mhm,
there's a load of roles like a VFX artist, you know, or technical artist or technical designer that maybe didn't exist 10 years ago because the technology wasn't really there, or the stuff that that person did fell under another role's kind of remit.
mhm,
So for us, like recently, we've had roles popping up like technical designer and VFX artist. You know, you get a lot of animation roles and specific animation roles as well. You know, you might have a character animator, you might have somebody that works in environment. You know, so the more specialized roles are definitely something that's becoming more common.
mhm,
Another role that didn't exist back when I was involved games previously is stuff around kind of community management. So, you know, interacting with your communities, because there wasn't really, you know, it was still online and people play games online, but not the way people play games online has changed so much. So you
mhm,
take a look at a game like Fortnite, or you know, something that's got seasonal updates, Fortnite and Apex and games like that that come out, and they have a set amount of content for a couple of months, and then it's always changing. So you need a team there that looks after that kind of engagement side, so that people know that it's coming out. I suppose it's marketing in a way, or it would have been
mhm,
a marketing role previously, but I think it's got a lot more drilled in the more games evolve.
mhm. That's actually because I know from obviously the community aspect, you do have a lot of like you've multiple faces of a company because you have the actual development, which happens in very much a secret sort of a way. The community, which could be like a forum that's separate from the game, but then in the game itself, you need moderators, you need people who will, make sure content is kept within guidelines, obviously.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And
it's
then
interesting.
when funny you mentioned content there, you know, once you add in, this is really important for us. User generated content is a big part of what Hightail is going to be.
Hmm.
So you know, even the moderation behind user generated content and how that looks and all is another piece of the puzzle.
Hmm. And then obviously new things, as you said, specialized roles are becoming a thing, and you may not have been like explicitly like a game developer for this thing, which was released. Then you know took those skills on with you, but you understand that with those skills you did use and you've learned, you're now able to apply them. Even from the talent acquisition standpoint, you're looking at people and you can understand on developmental side, maybe if they've used a language like C sharp or maybe another framework or engine, you're like, that makes sense. You understand that. and you
Yeah,
understand
I
how it will
understand the
play a role.
terminology and stuff.
Mhm.
That's a big, a big mountain to climb too. When you're thinking about getting into games, because everybody does that. I remember being, a teenager and playing the Super Nintendo and being like, I would love to make games. And back then it was like, well, at that age, all I thought was, oh, well, there must be a job that is a game developer. And I just assumed that person, did either that everything was the one thing. But then as you kind of get more into it and you start investigating a bit more, you find out there's different roles within it and there's different roles that apply to different skills.
Mhm.
So, maybe you're really good at maths. That might, lead you down a coding path and into kind of engineering, and whether or not that's working on, graphics programming, or maybe there's like AI or physics network. There's it branches off as you go down. So the best advice is to kind of think about what you like to do. Are you more creative? Do you like the way things work? That's always a good one for people who like design. So, if you pick something up and think, how does this work? Or, you tinker around with stuff, chances are you would probably enjoy game design, because you're essentially breaking things down into their small pieces and working out how they all work together and affect each other. And so the best advice is to think about what you like to do, and then kind of look down the avenues relating to that, and that'll expand out. Then you'll find that there's loads of different jobs for each thing that you could do. It just depends what attracts you the most.
Just from your own experience and your kind of thoughts on this, like, what would you recommend for a member of the Jam potentially to get involved with the games industry? What would you recommend, maybe steps now, or like not even specifically going into education, but like even a hobby or something like that?
Yeah, I would say just mess around with the games that you like. Look into, especially if you've got like a computer and you're playing games on a computer, look into, can I make stuff in the game or for the game? If you look up mods, Minecraft is a great one, because Minecraft's made to be changed, so you can go in there and you can make add-ons for it, little plugins for it, that'll add extra things, that'll make blocks that do different things. So there's if you get into that modding side of things, and it's stuff you're going to be playing anyway. I remember when I was a teenager, what I used to do was make maps for Quake 1, the game Quake 1. So, and then me and my friends used to go in and run around and shoot each other in the game. That was like, but that skill there, I was able to apply then later on, because I'd messed around in a level editor and I knew how to use it.
Hmm.
So it was something even I was doing it for the crack with my friends, but it was something I was able to use later on in education and then in work.
I think that basically wraps it up. So just as an end note, just want to say thank you very much, Cal, for joining us. And very much appreciate the time you've taken out to actually do the call, and hope
Yeah,
you enjoyed
anytime.
that on. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kyle from Hypixel. There's some real exciting things going on up there. Come on back. We're going to take a 5-minute break. You're going to be back with me. My name's Kevin Beamers. I run a company called Italic Pig. I'll be doing a game design crash course. Doesn't need anything other than pen, paper, your ideas, and a whole lot of thinking. So come on back, 4:25. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll see you then. Thanks a lot. How you doing, everybody? My name is Kevin Beamers. Welcome back to the NI Raspberry Jam, second workshop of the day. I run a company called Italic Pig. We make video games just up the road in Hollywood, with one L, that Hollywood. You all know it. And what I wanted to do today, because this is a game design, game-based event, was give you a bit of a crash course in some of the behind the scenes thinking in what really goes into video game design. And that's I mean, talking about taking an idea from zero, or this nebulous thing that's inside your mind, into trying to hammer it out a little bit, give it some shape, give it some foundation, give it a bit of concrete, and then pushing it all the way through to, is this thing even pitchable? Could I make it myself? That's actually a really good place to start. Oh, by the way, I can't see the feed, but Sam can. Sam is going to be the voice of the feed. So if any of you have questions, you want to ask me anything, I'm going to be asking you questions from time to time. Hopefully you can dump some answers into the feed, and Sam will relay those to me, and I'll try to answer them as we go. Because stuff like this is really more fun when you've got a room full of people all lobbing ideas at each other, bouncing, coming up with stuff as a group. A whole bunch of people working solo. I mean, that's the best we can do right now, but hopefully we can get some collaboration going in the feed. So I'll start by saying a lot of people in the indie game development scene are asked the question, how did you get into games? Very few of them say, oh, it's because, because the money is big, or because there's, it's most of the time it's a dream. It is someone's reasoning tends to be, there was a game I wanted to make and I got tired of waiting. I got tired of waiting for somebody else to make it, so I made it myself. And the beauty of game design and game development nowadays is that there are so many tools out there, and they are all free to use. I mean, Sam just made a game in the previous workshop, and it took him 45 minutes to get to the point where we had something to play. All a game needs to be defined as, is you tell the computer what to do, and the computer does something that it's somewhat predictable, and you can build on, and you can fix your skills, you can progress. So yeah, you tell it what to do, and it does something back. That's software, that's game development. So what I want to say here is that I'm going to hope that all of you who saw this was coming up probably have a game inside their head. They have something that, oh, wouldn't that be a cool idea? You've discussed it with your parents, discussed it with your friends, and just haven't really pulled the trigger on whether or not you could make something of this, any kind of game. And we've seen, again, from Sam, that you can make a game with a couple of bits of make code, some block coding. Like a couple weeks ago, it was 2 jams ago, we had the AstroPi that we were testing out. And while they were testing the humidity and putting a message on screen, I made an 8 pixel by 8 pixel game of Snake and posted that up to the International Space Station. So it is not about a limitation of distance or the processor time or your abilities as an artist or your abilities as a programmer. There's going to be something out there that anybody has the capabilities of making in a short amount of time, in the time of a game jam, in 48 hours, that sort of a thing. So can I ask if anybody has put anything into the feed? Have you got an idea for a game? I'm happy to write some stuff down and work with yours. Or if there's anything coming into the feed, let me know, Sam. Nothing at all. I mean, last time I did a talk like that, we had somebody come in with an idea about there was astronauts going from planet to planet. There was another one that was called Kittens in the Clouds. We didn't have anything more than a title. There was there was one called Light Beyond the Sky. I don't know what that one was about. It was a great title. Was that the one of the clouds? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, let me just say, for example,
Pac-Man.
Oh, Pac-Man. That's been done. But have we got a? Let's go. All right, I'm gonna move this out of the way. I'm gonna write down a couple of the last ones. In fact, Sam, if you've got any ideas yourself, or Andrew, Go for it. There was a game that we've been playing around with in the studio. That is, it's oops, we're on the wrong setting. Where you're a cube, and the inside the cube is a thing that needs to be protected, and it can roll along a cube-like path, sort of in this isometric setup, but it has to unfold as it goes and expose different walls of the game. Of the cube. So as it gets to this end point, the thing that's in the middle is completely exposed. But if there was a wall up between it and something that's shot, then it's a sort of hyper casual feel, if you know what I mean. It's a lot of flipping and moving, a lot of fast action, probably for mobile. We had. I'm going to use the examples from last time. What's that?
Minecraft.
What's that?
Minecraft.
Minecraft. Okay. Now are these we've heard Pac-Man and Minecraft, which are games that you're playing. I'm talking about any ideas that you may have on your own of something you'd like to make. It could be a Pac-Man adaptation. It could be a Minecraft adaptation. If for the sake of just working with an idea, I'm going to mention the one about it was an astronaut, and he was going planet to planet. Right? So let's say we're going planet to planet through the solar system. Right? So we've got our, sun in the center, and Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and we got Uranus and Neptune. And because I cannot draw the solar system without it, I am going to draw Pluto here, although some of you will disagree with me. No, it's a planet. It deserves a planet status. Okay, so anyway, that's it. We got a bit of a sentence. We have a character. We have somewhat of a narrative. We have something that feels like it could easily be a progression. Maybe he's getting home. I'm not sure. Look, if anything comes through, feel free to chuck them over here. By the way, but we've had
like a 3D zombie game. Someone mentioned
3D zombie game. All right, this is a sort of simple 1 or 2 words. 3D zombie, right? Everybody hates zombies. They're the common enemy now.
a Minecraft Fortnite. Someone's mentioned like a Minecraft Fortnite mix sort of thing.
Nice. Okay. Minecraft Fortnite. Okay, keep thinking about those ideas and this astronaut planet to planet type thing. Right. Now, when we are considering how we are going to put a game together, one of the things that comes up after you've done a lot of the, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, is trying to lock it down towards something like a platform. Okay? Just going to write the word platform somewhere on this. I'm going to move this way. Okay. So, platform. Now, the reason I'm mentioning platform, it's a bit of a boring word, but what we're talking about here is what is this game going to be played on? Some games work across the board. Some games work in all different media. Sometimes a game will move from, you know what, let's list a few, right? Can anybody shoot a platform at me? By platform, I'll give you an example of one. I will say console. So, console, that's your Xbox, that's your PlayStations, that's your Switch, right?
Someone mentioned like Monopoly simulators, like a board kind of, like a
Right?
tabletop.
Oh, okay, yep. My writing is terrible. Monopoly simulator. Are we simulating? Is it a board game simulator, as in we're playing Monopoly, or are we? Ooh, that's so many layers of questions on that. Right. So over here, I've mentioned console, which is Xbox, PlayStation, Switch. Let's give you.
Someone said PC.
Someone said PC. Perfect. PC. And that is your, Steam or which others. Steam. You got the Epic Store, for example. Right. Another one. Everyone's got one in their pocket.
Oh, mobile phone.
I'm just gonna write that. Yes, there it is. Mobile phone. You, Sam, you mentioned tabletop. That's a great one that sometimes goes amiss. Tabletop.
Someone's idea actually was like when villains attacks, like defending your bank vault.
When villains. Oh, okay. Bank. When villains attack. Villains. that's a bit of a, I'm going to just put here heist or bolt, right? Okay, great.
Ooh, someone mentioned like a tablet or like a larger kind of.
Okay, I'm going to mobile, I'll put tablet as a separate, yeah, because there is a difference between thumbing and finger. Tablet, and one that may not have come through, I'm going to put immersive here. That's one that sometimes gets forgotten. That's your VR, AR. That's now, the reason something like platform is really important to think about is because of the way in which you play in each of these. Some are keyboard and mouse. Some of them are touch with finger, thumb, multiple fingers, multiple people on one screen. You're playing things with split screen. You can play, yeah, like I said, control. Or when you get all the way down to VR, AR, your body is the controller. So it's the movement of your head or the movement of your hands, and you bumping something that you would have a set of controls or direct control that you'd have to be dealing with if you were developing the game in a different way.
Nintendo Switch.
Switch? Technically, that's what this is right here, the SW of under console. I know it's a little bit different from your, like, your Xbox audience, your PlayStation audience, and your Switch audience. They vary. But it's a machine that you buy that has a controller attached to it. Let's call that that's a console. Handheld, I suppose, is the other. That's, yeah, I see what you mean by the hybrid version. Anyway, right. So playing something on the Switch is completely different from playing something on mobile, and which is also completely different playing it on a headset and with a couple of controllers. With all this, so when we go back to our ideas, for example, our astronaut going planet to planet. If this is a console game, it might end up being something that feels like a third-person adventure. It might be a strategy game. It might be some sort of simulation. Maybe you have to gather up the resources that you need in order to get off planet. Maybe you're just flying through the solar system, crashing through all the planets until you get to Earth, and you gotta grab some stuff in order to rebuild your spaceship every single time. Or maybe you're looking for intelligent life. And the difference between playing something on your mobile, let's put it this way. The other thing about platform is it's not only the controls, it's also the audience, what age, what range, who's expected to be playing it. There's a certain demographic that purchases an Xbox versus the demographic of people who have phones in their pockets, or the ones who have an HTC Vive at home, or an Oculus Quest. So all of these things will factor in to how the game is designed. So platform is a good one. Second one that's really important is genre. Genre is a great word. Means a lot of things. For some, it's a crutch. For some, it's a set of limitations. For some, it's just a grouping of categories. I'm just going to write the word genre here. Can anybody name me a few genres in the feed? I will start with one. I will say role-playing game, RPG. I will give you another one.
Tycoon.
Tycoon, nice. Okay, Tycoon. Would you Tycoon / Sim, or would you break those out into two different things?
I'll probably make them the same.
Yeah, Tycoon and Sim.
Someone also came up with the idea. Richard said catching all the items flying at you.
Catch the items flying at you. That is a mechanic. Okay.
And he also mentioned action and adventure.
Catching items, and we've also action adventure. I'm going to bring action adventure over here into genre.
Oh, it's more.
Action adventure. And somebody said sport. Right. I will give you. I'll list a few more. Let's say strategy. What about? Oh, nice. I've got these little prompts here. I'll show them to you in a minute. Simulation. We got racing.
Comedy.
I'll put comedy down. It's some people look at that as a. I can see it being the sort of thing where you would look for comedic games, but I suppose what I'm talking about in terms of genre is related to the mechanic, related to the thing that you do in the game, as opposed to whether the game, triggers certain feelings, or there's dialogue within, or what makes a comedic game. You can have a comedic one touch, and you can have a comedic third person shooter or real time strategy if you wish. Right? Racing. What else did I have here? Sim strategy. By the way, okay, I'll introduce these at the moment. I participated with the Young Game Designers Awards. It's a BAFTA thing that they do every year. It's open to, I think there's a 10 to 14 category and a 14 to 18 category, something like that. But one of the things they do is they go around to different schools, if you're lucky enough to get in on this, and they have lots of teaching resources and this deck of cards, which is just sort of full of little ideas. It's so what I'm looking at here is a set of genre cards. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I'm happy to talk it through. Racing, simulation, adventure, role-playing game, arcade, puzzle, strategy. With each of these, part of the let's make a game in one school period comes from sort of dealing out at random a deck of cards. All right, you didn't know you were making a strategy game today, but guess what? Today you're doing strategy. Right. So, genre and platform. These two things both feed into how the game is played. We're talking about something like, look, I can go back to our astronaut going planet to planet. If we make it a mobile game and we decide it's going to be a tycoon/sim, we've got a central theme, central character, and we've decided that, okay, it's probably resource management. It might be that you're going planet to planet collecting samples. It might be that you're trying to save yourself from certain death before you run out of oxygen, but you need to generate that oxygen from the things that you find on the planet. That's got that tycoon sim feel to it. You'd have a system of balancing, and it feeds back into itself. You collect the items, you grow the items, you reach a certain point, and then it's time to lift off and go to planet number 2. I could say the same thing again and say this is going to be a astronaut planet to planet. It's made for PC and Steam. It's going to be a racing game, and it's also going to be comedy. So you could, in that sense, have a game where, let's say, there are several different countries all fighting for resources, and everyone's trying to get to the core of every planet. And from that, you need to, I don't know, build up your drill or fly your pieces to that planet, and you need to get to the center before anybody else does. Maybe you're just digging and you have to avoid, I don't know, huge lumps of iron and go for the soft material. Maybe it's a mining game. All of this stuff is just riffing off a title and a list of possibilities. Finally, not a finally, but, nice. Okay. In immersive, there's no reason why our astronaut, the No Man's Sky VR has just come out, or has been out for about a year or so, but that is literally an astronaut going from planet to planet and just checking stuff out. And that's all done in the VR AR version. No, it's a VR version that it's again collecting resources, exploring the planet, checking out the animals. Right. Genre also feeds into stuff like, is there going to be a story? Are there going to be characters? Also, what kind of art style you're going to be working with? Because, you can have first-person shooters are traditionally 3D. Platformers are traditionally 2D. But that's not to say that's always going to be the case. It's going to be difficult doing a pixel art real-time, no, not a real-time strategy, sorry, a pixel art-based third-person shooter, but I would imagine something like that does exist. I don't know. Please feel free to shout it out if you do. But as you can see, it's like by deciding on one of these, it may say, all right, there's a certain expectation that this genre, that this audience will want out of a racing game, out of a sports game, out of an RPG, which will demand that I hire certain types of artists or certain type of talent of the programming skills and such. You got some coming in?
Someone said an obstacle course on like a planet.
Okay.
So like, you're working with gravity and such there, and then you're having to actually kind of like, strategically potentially work around different planets and how they...
Obstacle course planet. Why not? Any of these. Okay, we're going to come back to those. Right. So we're on genre, racing. Right. And what I was going to say, by the way, I said it about genre. Genre at times can it can pigeonhole you. Like, by putting a label on it, there are a certain number of expectations that will go with the genre. But at the same time, everybody loves a twist from time to time. Innovation. There's a guy that I work with at the studio who says innovation is expensive. And that is true. But at the same time, without innovation, we would all have the same thing coming out over and over and over again. If we decide to make an RPG and it's in space, and then we make another RPG and it's the exact same thing, but it's in the Wild West, and we do it again and it's in the ocean, and we do it again and except it's on the I don't know, it's microscopic on the surface of a flower or something like that. All of these, if it was the exact same RPG and it just got reskinned, we'd all get a little bit tired of that. So let the genre inspire you, or to allow it to be there, to hang your hat on it, to take from it, but don't lock yourself into it. Don't say the worst reason for going ahead with something is because that's the way it's always been done. That's the way it's always been done is for two reasons. One is that nobody's tried anything different with it, or two, people have tried and they found out it didn't work. But it's still worth blazing that trail and checking out to see if you can add a twist to the same old thing, because then it's something new. Right. Thirdly, what we got? Platform genre. I'm also going to say a third one over here, which I'm going to call progression. Right. So progression. This is a little bit more vague. A little bit. It's your goal. It's your. How do you find out that you're doing well? How do you inspire yourself to keep coming back tomorrow to play it again? How do you know your skills are building? How do you know? Is it money? Is it energy? Oh, in fact, I'm going to write some of these down. Progression is, it can be score. It can be, oops, ooh, exciting. Okay, it can be score. It can be, let's call it money. So in-game coins, let's call it energy. It could be strength. The amount of armor, the amount of time, it could be time, right? Now, some of these are feed into the mechanic of how long does the game last? How do I know I'm doing well? How do I know I'm doing better? But it could also refer to goals, such as, again, I'm going to refer to my little cards here. I've got a set of goal cards. One of them is reach a destination. Right, so you're on a journey, and when you hit the end, bang, you have won. You have received a reward or a cutscene. You've made it to the end of the line. Maybe progression is down to using items. So you're collecting a number of things, and once you're empty, that means like you collect them along the way and you have to distribute them. Maybe you're delivering packages. Maybe you have to expend all your fuel before you're allowed to go to the next level. Sam, you got something.
Someone said about how the progression beginning across all the planets within a specific time, or first petition.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our racing game on perhaps any of these could work, I suppose. And the progression is reaching the destination, getting to the next planet before anybody else. Or collecting the most resources, energy, whatever that is. Resources, let's call it money. So you had to get all the iron off the planet. And once all the iron is collected, whoever has the most iron, it's a competitive game. Maybe it's local multiplayer. What about destroy all objects? Destroy objects. So something like destroying objects is, that's Brick Breaker. That's, when everything's gone, you move on to the next level. Completing the puzzle. We got capture. I don't know what we're capturing. Finding all the items. It's a treasure game. It's a mining game. It's, you got to get all the pieces of your ship back together before you fly away. Remove all enemies. That's, you dominate the planet when everyone else is gone. That's, yeah. Escape. Ooh, there you go. Escape and rescue. In the case of this astronaut game, we're going hand in hand. We're either rescuing, maybe we've gone to the planet because there's members of our crew that have been lost, and we have to stop on each planet to do so. I don't know what explosion ended up with 8 different members of your crew on 8 different planets, but hey, why not? Survive. I mean, survive is one of the main drivers behind a lot of games. Survive is Pac-Man is survive. Tetris is survive. Among Us is survive. Minecraft is survive. A lot of the time, you're dead. You're dead. And knowing how long you lived may be the thing that drives you. Oh, there's some great survival games, sort of that zombie genre, going back to your 3D zombies, where it was a permadeath based game. Maybe you live for as long as you can during the zombie apocalypse, but when you're dead, that's the end of your game. You got to start over and do it all again. So progression. This is, how do I get better? How do I know I'm getting better? And what makes me keep coming back? So again, these are all sort of goals. But it could also include things like, well, maybe I know by level. They're discrete levels. There are end games. There's earnings. There's competition. There's story advancement. Maybe I've earned a cutscene, right? All of these bits and pieces, you don't have to use them all. You should pick one and run with it, or maybe 2, or an adaptation of the 2. But don't feel as though just because it's an action adventure, it needs to be progressed by the next cutscene or the reaching of a destination. Yes.
Someone has said, like, finding all your colleagues before your ship takes off.
Find all your colleagues so the Martian. Yes. Colleagues. Let's call it, I'm going to write here, colleague rescue. And race against time. Cool. Okay. Right. Now, what I will say is, when it comes to development, and this is a really important point to anybody. I'm going to go back to some sort of, there we go. That's a nice central spot. When you are developing a game, the game will change. It's a really important lesson, big enough that I'm going to write it up here in a different part of the board and then never go back to it. Right? And that is that development and making the game are not the same thing. If you think what you do is, like, obviously, during the course of development, the goal is to have a game that comes out the other end. But if you think that development is, I have an idea for a game, I'm going to write it all down, I'm going to hire a team to build it, and they're going to give it back to me, and it's going to be in the same condition that it was in my head when it arrived, then that's not going to work. That's not how it does. Development is not only making it, but it is also the development of the idea. It is the change of the idea. It is the influence of other members of the team. So you will need a programmer and an artist, or unless you do all that sort of stuff yourself, even within your own mind, the game will change because something you thought changed when it got to the paper, and something you put on paper changed when you got it onto the screen. And maybe you got it all the way to the screen, and then you said, you know what, this just isn't fun. This needs to be fixed. And that doesn't mean you're making a different game. It means your game developed. So it may be a case of you started making a first-person shooter, but then you got to a certain point and realized it's actually more of a strategy game. Or it is a puzzler platformer. That can happen. And that's totally fine. And that is where I think the magic of game development happens, is when you realize the game is not about making perfection, it's about ruining perfection. Or you think the game is about building a puzzle, but it's actually about, I don't know, shattering the pieces or hiding them. That actually turned out to be more fun. Those sorts of bit of emergent gameplay inside the studio, that's where you go, we really have something fun on our hands here. I have a third set of cards, by the way. And if you happen to be coming up with ideas at home, if you've been working through some of the stuff that I've said on the board here, maybe you've got your mind set on something. I've got a set of rules cards. And I want you to just pick a number in your head between 1 and, looks like 9. And throw this into the mix. Okay, I'm going to throw a rule at you. It's a little bit like progression. It's not necessarily about can you collect it. Well, maybe it is. Let's find out. So, rule number 1. If you chose the number 1, this is you. You can't do the same thing twice in a row. Number 2, you must not be seen. Number 3, you have a time limit. Okay? Apply any one of these things to your game or something else completely different. You can't touch the ground. Maybe the whole thing is the floor is lava. Right. Limited inventory. You need to collect a bunch of things, but you can only fit a certain amount in your pack at once. Let's go with, I've lost track of what number I'm on, so just use them for inspiration. Bounce off the walls. Can only move forwards. Yeah, maybe your jetpack's only working in one direction. So, if you miss something, you got to go all the way around the planet before you can catch it again. Avoid enemies. And you've only got 1 life. Something in there you might not have worked through, or you hadn't applied that to your game. Maybe it was let's talk about the whole 1 life thing. It's what's really been interesting during the course of games development for the past, let's say, 40 years, is going from the arcade, which was, coin driven, to console, to mobile. We've seen it go from you pay a quarter and you get a certain amount of time. Wouldn't have been a quarter here. What coin would you have dropped in? Is it a pound? Is it 20p? I don't know. 50p. Yeah, 50p. All right, 50p a game. There you go. But what they wanted was for you to play just enough for you to get hooked on it, and then you have to drop in another 50p to keep playing. When you get to games like on the console, that's where things like death and reset came from, or checkpoints. Because obviously we want you to get all the way to the end of the game. If you die, we don't want, as soon as you get the words game over coming up on screen, that's an easy moment for you to say, you know what? I'm going to stop playing my console and I'm going to go outside. And game developers, they don't want you to do that. So they would rather you were like, yeah, I'm still in. Yeah, I'm still in. I'll play one more. Yep. So that's why death chucks you back a few steps in the level, but you're allowed to just keep on playing. And then you got something like, I would say free-to-play to some degree, like freemium games have almost come full circle, except it's not you putting the quarters, it's the advertisers. So you will play a game and you'll get a limited number of lives, and when those lives are up, it'll say you can have 1 more life if you watch one of our ads. And so it's kind of like you've given 15, 30 seconds of your time to a third party. It'd be like going into the arcade and having an insurance salesman standing next to the console and saying, I noticed you're dead. Can I tell you about my company for this shiny quarter? And then they hand you a quarter and then you keep on playing. And it's whether or not it's worth your time or theirs to be there, putting it in front of you. So obviously, all this stuff is changing how progression is done, how games are played. Again, we're looping back to all these things again. Platform, genre, progression. All of those things keep feeding back. Whether you've paid for the game, whether you've paid a little bit for the game, like a quarter, whether you paid a lot for the game, like 40, 50, 60 pounds, whether you've paid nothing for the game, we'll get you in free, and then we'll start nickel and diming you with little bits of things that will make the game just a little bit better, and make the game up by bringing down the wall, and then hoping that a percent of a percent will give you a few pennies, which will of course add up to zillions if you've got that many people playing. So I think it's really important that if you're thinking about making a game that is marketable and profitable, that's, it's not everybody's cup of tea to make something. Maybe you just want to make something that gives you the feels. Maybe you want to make something that entertains your friends. That's totally legitimate. That's a lot of people go into the games for that reason. The games. Right. Now, one of my favorite questions when it comes to development, especially in the early stages of development, is, I sort of mentioned this back when we were talking about genre, And it is the question, but what if it isn't? And I love the question, but what if it isn't? It makes us shake up our expectations of the genre, of the platform, of any part of this, and say, what can we change that bit? Is there a reason why people do things this way? Or if we twist it, is that going to make it better? Is that going to make it different? Is it going to make it stand out? Right? So, but what if it isn't is one of my favorite questions there. So, like, for example, it's also a case of turning it on its head, turning the entire idea upside down. So, by turning it on its head, I mean, again, we're talking about our astronauts going planet to planet. We've been talking about it as, I think the idea that's kind of stuck is the race to the core or the race to get materials. Of course, we've also been talking about being a rescue. Get all the members of your crew and get off the planet before bad stuff happens. But taking your own idea, changing the genre. You can change the platform. What happens if we take a game like that and we do it on mobile? Does it work still? Well, if we do it on mobile, might have to change the gameplay session. We might have to make things a lot shorter and a quicker loop. Because strangely enough, on mobile, the shorter the game loop, the longer people tend to play. People will play again on a 10-second loop, but they might think twice about watching, about playing something that's a 5-minute loop or something like that. In a way, you can sort of equate it to choosing something to watch on Netflix. Sometimes you'll say, I don't have time for a movie. You'll put on a show instead. But then you'll watch 5 episodes of that show in succession, which ends up being longer than the original movie. But it's the commitment of you getting in the door of a small loop, a 10-second loop. You might play a 10-second game for 45 minutes, but you might only play a 5-minute loop. Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready for another whole 5 minutes. Right? Changing the platform, change the controls, change the mechanic, change the art style. What if we did this, but it is on a 2D plane? What if we do it with pixel art? And what if we do it, what if it's like Terraria or like Minecraft, where things are squares and the planet is square, and we can run down the top or down the side of it, and we can dig inwards, and it's all grid-based, right? What if it's a game that's it's a planetary system based on Flatland? If you don't know what Flatland is, you know what? Look it up. It's probably free online somewhere, right? So, where are we? Yes, story, difficulty, inspiration, hook, all of that stuff. Listen, okay. I'm going to start wrapping up, but the last thing I want to cover is, may seem a little advanced at this stage because we've only been working on our game for about, half an hour, and everybody's just getting started. But I'm going to talk about pitching, because the pitching of an idea, you're going to have to tell somebody about it someday. The game is not going to be made. You could hack away at it in your basement for the next 10 years, or the next 6 months, and maybe come up with something, but you'll probably want to get that released somehow. You'll want to get it on to one of the app stores. You'll want to get it onto Steam. You'll want to get it onto Twitch. You want to get onto Itch. Anything like that. You want somebody to play a game. Otherwise, you've just made a thing and you've put it under a box and hidden it away. The best way to think about pitching is the understanding that no idea can grow in the dark. And be ready for somebody to say, that's a good idea, but adapt. You know what would be better. And you take those on board or you leave them behind, right? But talking about your idea is an important part of the idea process. So usually, if I was doing a session, if this was a live session, we were all in the same room, would have put you all in groups, would have made you go with people you don't know, would have made you bounce ideas off of each other. That is a really fun process. I run an event called Idea Jam from time to time when events are held. And it's about getting people sitting at a table and finally dumping that thing in their head onto paper and forming it into something, kind of like what we're doing now, right? But if you're going to pitch an idea, I'm talking about the situation where it turns out you're sitting in the same room as somebody who runs a game company, or you're sitting on the bus next to the guy who runs PlayStation. It could happen. It's happened to me. And if you've got an idea that has a form, that has a, that you can explain in an easy way, it has a concept, has inspiration, it's got a hook, then what you hopefully will get out of someone like that is they will ask you for more. They want you to say, tell me more. So I've got an idea. First of all, let me break down the idea of, as far as I'm concerned, the elements of a pitch. First of all, you need we're red. Okay, you need a title. Here's your title kit. Right? You tell somebody the title, and they go, "Oh, that sounds good. Give me more." Right? So, have we got anything that feels like a title down here? When villains attack. That feels like a title. Right? Minecraft beats Fortnite. That's a concept. But when villains attack is a title. Again, catching items. That is a mechanic. That's something we'll do in the game that'll promote progression. Race against time is also progression mechanic. Colleague rescue isn't exactly a catchy name, but if we're going, we call it, I don't know, planet rescue. We call it solar storm. Now there's a game called Solar Storm. I don't know. Right. So catchy title. When villains attack. Concept. Can you explain your concept in one sentence? Okay, this is important. If your concept sentence is, there's this guy and he's doing this thing and he's crashed onto a planet, but it's not one planet, it's 8 planets, or maybe 9 if you count Pluto, which I do. But if there's a certain number of levels, and that's not a concept pitch. That's me just going into this feeling of what the game might be like. Concept is you're traveling across the solar system, rescuing members of your team before the planet explodes. I don't know. Even that is kind of a wordy pitch. See if you can get your concept down into one sentence. If you can't get it into one sentence, maybe the concept's too much, right? But try to explain it as tightly as possible. Thirdly, inspiration. It is not a bad thing to compare your game to other games. It is not a bad thing to start off by saying, well, it's like Candy Crush, but... And because if people recognize it, if you say this is a game like nothing you've ever seen before in your entire life and it's going to blow your mind, then you've got nothing to hang your hat on. The person who's listening to you will go, well, give me at least something to start from. Okay? I can say things like there are no new ideas under the sun. And that's not a negative way of looking at the world. It's that there's a lot of content out there. And some have done a concept right, and sometimes a concept is flopped because there's a twist that's missing. So inspiration, it's okay to compare yourself to other games. And in fact, one of my favorite inspiration phrases when explaining a story or a concept to a publisher or a funder is, I'm gonna even change the color of this. Let's go with green. It's A plus B with twist of C. Right? It's Call of Duty meets Candy Crush with a twist of Tetris. And you're like, ooh, that sounds, I don't know what that even is, but I want to hear more. Right? So if you can think of a few games that twist your, it's Lemmings meets Rayman with a little bit of FTL thrown in. And that's, okay, well, what parts, I'm assuming you took the good parts and you merged the good parts together. Tell me more. That's what you want to hear out of the other people. Now, final thing out of a nice pitch is the hook. If inspiration is, it's like something else, hook is, why is it different? It's like Candy Crush, but hook. It's like, I said, Call of Duty meets, what did I say before? Call of Duty meets Pac-Man with a twist of Candy Crush, right? It's like, okay, well, tell me, okay, it's like Candy Crush because there's candy and it's on mobile and it's progression and it's, but the hook, the thing that makes this one different is, I don't know, you're killing zombies as you go. I've gone completely off the planetary idea now, but yes. what makes it the same as popular games? What makes it different from anything you've ever played? What is the twist on your game? And the reason for those two things coming together is because if you say it's like Candy Crush, that may take care of 95% of your explanation. And then you can spend the rest of the hour concentrating on the 5% that makes it different. And anytime they're like, yeah, but you go, oh, it's just like Candy Crush, right? So, a nice pitch is, hello, my game is called Title. This is the concept in a sentence. It's a genre game for platform where you progress in a particular way. It's a bit like Inspiration. It's an A plus B with a twist of C, but I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes talking about what makes it different from all those things. And if you've done it right, then at the end of that conversation, the guy says, that sounds awesome. Here's some money, go make it. Get some friends together, show me a prototype. And yeah, the only way something's going to move forward is if you have talked about your idea with more than one person, more than just yourself. And you've taken it out of the bag, shown it around a little bit, and then put it back in the bag and say, it's still a work in progress. Right. That pretty much sums up where I am. What I can bestow upon you in 45 minutes, or in fact 46 or perhaps 47 minutes. But I'm going to turn things over to Sam just to close up right here. Yes. Okay. And I'm going to leave that way. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
So, thanks, Kevin, once again, for that game design crash course workshop.
You're welcome.
Kevin himself has been involved with the games industry in many, many different ways in the past, and he even said himself he runs a games company. But for now, though, we'd like to thank Abby, Vincent, Claire, Jack, Andrew, Kevin, Stephen, Kaelin, and Lucy for letting and making today possible. It's both in front and behind the camera, as well as Kyle for helping take part and taking his time to do the workshop or the interview. If you really like this month's jam, would like to sign up for the next month's jam, you can. The tickets are out on Eventbrite right now if you use our page, or you can use the link that is posted in the YouTube live chat now. In the chat, there should be another link to this month's feedback form. If you can, please fill it in. It's just a wee short form to give your thoughts and let the team know what you think about today's jams and activities. It has loads of ideas and gives us the way, lets us improve each jam each month. That's everything from us though. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you in the future.